Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
The desert wasn't just hot, it pushed back. Wind hissed like a creature inhaling, ragged and deliberate. Sand curled around Ethan Cole's boots with every step, dragging at the leather like fingers trying to pull him down into something patient and hungry. The sky wasn't blue anymore. It was white with heat, bleached of color, pressing down on his skull like a hand. His metal canteen swung against his hip, so light it felt like mockery. He'd stopped shaking it an hour ago. The silence inside had told him everything. Ethan's lips were cracked deep enough to taste copper. His tongue sat in his mouth like a piece of dried leather. Each breath burned going in, burned worse coming out. The air itself felt hostile, superheated, wrong, like the planet was trying to cook him from the inside out. He whispered to the empty horizon, voice barely more than a rasp. Just one more ridge. It was a lie. He'd been telling himself that lie for the last 3 ridges, but lies were all he had left, and they were cheaper than water. The ridge ahead shimmered in the heat distortion, wavering like something seen underwater. Ethan focused on it, one boot in front of the other, mechanical, refusing to think about how his knees felt like rusted hinges or how his vision kept narrowing at the edges. Then, there, a faint metallic glimmer beyond the shimmer, solid and real. A hut, single structure, perched on stilts like it was trying to outrun the sand that had already swallowed half the planet. Solar panels on the roof, angled to catch the brutal sun. Water condenser units attached to the sides, their coils glinting. Water. The thought hit him harder than thirst. His pace quickened, stumbling now, discipline breaking down into raw need. But something stopped him at the base of the final approach. Tracks, deep gouges in the sand, staggered and uneven, clawed. 3-toed prints wider than his torso, circling the hut in a territorial pattern that made the hair on his neck stand up despite the heat. Not desert wildlife. Something heavy, something that walked upright. Ethan's hand went to his hip, empty holster, lost in the crash, and he felt suddenly, acutely aware of how small he was, how exposed, how the wind had died to nothing, leaving only silence and the smell of scorched sand. He looked back at the way he'd come. Empty dunes stretching to the white horizon, no shelter, no options. Forward then. He climbed the ridge. As he crested it, the wind shifted, carrying a sound from behind the hut. Low, guttural, territorial. A growl. Ethan froze, every survival instinct screaming, but his body had nothing left to give. He couldn't run, could barely stand. The hut was 20 meters away, the door a rectangle of shadow that promised coolness, water, life. The growl came again, closer. He moved. His fist hit the metal door hard enough to send shock up his arm, the sound ringing out across the silent dunes like a bell. Silence. Then, step, step, step. Each one shook the frame. Dust drifted down from the door seal. Something massive was moving inside, deliberate and unhurried. The footfalls of something that had never needed to fear what was on the other side of a door. The door ripped open. There she was. Blue skin, deep indigo shading to cobalt at the joints. Tall, not just tall, massive, her head blocking out the sun, casting Ethan into sudden shadow. Armored plating across her shoulders and chest, segmented like an insect's carapace but clearly metallic. Scorched and dented from use. Eyes the color of glacier ice, cold and assessing, with a sharpness that suggested humor but offered none. She looked down at him. Really looked. Not the way you'd look at a person, the way you'd inspect a broken tool someone had delivered to your door. Her breath was steady, controlled, the rhythm of someone who lived with danger as a constant companion rather than an occasional visitor. A small device at her collar clicked, translating her words with mechanical precision. Not my order. I paid for the meaty one. The door started to close. Ethan's hand moved before his brain caught up, jamming his empty canteen into the gap. Metal groaned. The door caught on the canteen's edge, stopped halfway. His hand was trapped between door and frame, bones grinding, pain shooting up his forearm in white-hot spikes. But the door stopped. The giantess's brows lifted. Not anger, Not yet. Amusement mixed with disbelief, like she just watched something absurd and couldn't quite process it. Something inside the hut hissed sharply, a pressure release, mechanical and urgent. Her head snapped around, body tensing, and for just a second Ethan saw it. Fear. Real, immediate, suppressed almost instantly, but there. She looked back at him, still trapped in her doorway, and something shifted behind those glacier eyes. "Stupid," she said. Then she grabbed his wrist, not his hand, his wrist, her fingers wrapping completely around it, and yanked him inside. The world tilted. Ethan tried to stand, tried to process the sudden coolness of the interior, the mechanical hum of life support systems, his knees folded. Everything went sideways. The floor rushed up and he hit it hard, skull bouncing off metal grating, vision exploding into stars and darkness. He heard her exhale sharply, annoyed, inconvenienced. She muttered something in her own language, guttural and harsh, too angry for the translator to bother with. Then hands, massive, calloused, surprisingly gentle, grabbed him by the collar and lifted. He felt himself being dragged across the floor, boots scraping against metal, the world reduced to glimpses. Storage crates, a weapons rack, a console blinking red warnings. She dropped him onto something soft, a bunk. His vision swam. He caught fragments, her moving with military efficiency, pulling medical supplies from overhead compartments. A red indicator on the wall console. Water reserve low. Rava, he didn't know her name yet, but he would, stared at the indicator, stared at him, stared back at the warning. Her jaw clenched, teeth visible, and he saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. The math of survival, the cost of kindness. She reached for something above his head, an IV line, preloaded and sterile, and snapped it into his arm with practiced brutality. No warning, no gentleness, just the sharp sting of the needle-finding vein. Ethan gasped, tried to speak, but she pressed a hand against his chest, pinning him down effortlessly. "Don't," she said. "Move!" But then her hand hesitated, hovered over a valve on the main water tank, moved past it. She connected the IV to a second line, a hidden reserve tank he hadn't seen, smaller, tucked behind the primary reservoir. Personal supply, maybe, emergency only. The fluid hit his bloodstream, cool and clean, and Ethan felt his body seize on it desperately, cells screaming in relief. His vision started to clear. She was standing over him, arms crossed, watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Not compassion, not cruelty, something harder, more complicated. "You're wasting my water," she said. "Thank you," Ethan managed. "I didn't do it for you." She turned away, moving to the console. Her fingers danced across the controls, pulling up screens, and Ethan caught glimpses. A contract document, dense with legal text, her signature at the bottom. A human silhouette labeled Meat Shield, grade bulk. She clicked her tongue in disgust. Her gaze drifted, just for a second, to something hanging by the bunk. A small stone, etched with marks. 3 claw gouges over a circle. Her hand touched it, reverent, and then pulled back like it had burned her. The console pinged. Her whole body went rigid. She leaned forward, studying the radar display. Multiple heat signatures moving across the dunes. Headed toward something. Wreckage, maybe. The crash site Ethan had crawled away from hours ago. And one signature breaking off from the pack, turning, coming toward the hut. Rava's hand moved to the rifle mounted on the wall, fingers tracing the stock without picking it up. Her breathing changed, still controlled, but faster now, alert. Ethan tried to sit up. The world spun lazily but held together. "What is it?" he croaked. She didn't answer, just kept staring at the radar screen as the blip grew closer. Outside, something howled. Not the growl from before, something else, higher pitched and mechanical. An engine, a vehicle. "Get up," Rava said quietly. "I can't. Get up." There was no room for argument in her voice. This wasn't a request. It was a combat order. Ethan forced himself upright, every muscle screaming protest. The IV line pulled taut and Rava ripped it out without ceremony, slapping a seal patch over the entry point. She moved to the window, a narrow slit reinforced with ballistic glass, and looked out. Her shoulders tightened. Friends of yours? Ethan asked. No. Then, clan. The word landed like a stone. She turned back to him, and he saw it clearly now. She wasn't just tense. She was afraid. Whatever was coming, it was worse than the desert. Worse than letting a stranger die on her doorstep. You need to hide, she said. From your own people? Her expression went flat, dangerous. They aren't my people. Not anymore. She grabbed a cargo crate and shoved it toward him. Get in. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? She didn't. Her hand had moved back to the rifle, this time gripping it properly, checking the charge indicator with muscle memory. Ethan looked at the crate, looked at her, looked at the radar screen where the blip was now less than a kilometer out. He got in the crate. She sealed it just as the engine sound grew loud enough to rattle the walls. Through the gaps in the crate's ventilation slits, Ethan could see in fragments. Rava moving to the door, rifle held low but ready. Her breathing steady again, forced calm. The engine cut out. Footsteps on the sand outside. Multiple sets. Heavy boots, unhurried. A fist pounded on the door. Not desperate like Ethan's had been, but commanding. Ownership. Rava waited 3 seconds, then opened it. Keth, she said, and even through the translator, Ethan heard the poison in the name. Rava. A male voice deeper than thunder, amused. Alone out here? That's not like you. Contract work. Private. Oh, we know. Saw your filing. Meat shield, grade bulk. A laugh. Expensive toy. Where is he? Delayed shipment. That's so. Footsteps inside now. Ethan held his breath, watching through the slits as 3 figures moved past the crate. Blue skin like Rava, armored similarly, but their gear was more worn, more personalized. Raiders, not soldiers. Keth, the leader, judging by how the others deferred, was broader than Rava, scarred across the face, one eye replaced with a mechanical implant that whirred as it focused. He was looking around the hut, cataloging, assessing. Heard about the crash, he said casually. Human transport, medical supplies, very valuable. Then go get them. Oh, we are, just wanted to check in, make sure you weren't getting any ideas. Ideas about the cargo, about where it goes, who it belongs to. He turned to face her fully. Those supplies were meant for the canyon brood, weren't they? Silence. Ethan felt his heart hammering against his ribs. He could see Rava's hand, just visible through the slits, tightening on the rifle grip. The children need them, she said quietly. The children will survive or they won't. That's not our problem anymore, Rava. You know the rules. You left the brood. You don't get to care what happens to it. They're dying. Then they're weak. He stepped closer. We salvage what we can, sell what we must. That's how we survive out here. I used to be a lot of things. Yeah, you were useful. He gestured to his companions. Check the perimeter. Make sure she's really alone. One of them moved toward the crate. Ethan pressed himself back, trying to become smaller, invisible, anything. His hand touched something in the crate's corner. A piece of broken equipment, jagged edge, heavy enough to... The raider kicked the crate. This one's sealed. Open it. Rava moved fast. Stepping between Keth and the crate, rifle coming up to a ready position. Not aimed, not yet, but the threat clear. Contract seals, she said. Legal protection. You open it, you void my claim. That gets expensive. Keth stared at her. The mechanical eye whirred, focusing, analyzing. Then he smiled. You always were good with the rules. Fine. Keep your secrets. He turned toward the door, his companions following. But Rava, that crash site? Consider it ours. Those supplies are going to traders, not some brood house full of weaklings. And if you have a problem with that, he patted the weapon at his hip. You know where to find us. They left. The engine roared to life, faded into the distance. Rava stood frozen for a long moment, rifle still raised, listening until the sound disappeared completely. Then she opened the crate. Ethan looked up at her, still breathing hard, adrenaline making his hands shake. They're going to steal medicine from children? Yes. She turned away, moving back to the console, and Ethan saw her hands shake, just once, quickly suppressed, before she started pulling up new screens. He climbed out of the crate, legs barely holding him, and made his way to the console. Looked at what she was looking at, the crash site, tracked by satellite, the medical transport he'd been on, broken across a dune field, cargo bay split open, figures moving around it, prying open crates, and on another screen, the contract, the one she'd filed, payment receipt, timeline, specifications, a window of time purchased, privacy guaranteed, no clan interference for 72 hours. Except they just interfered. I was on that transport, Ethan said quietly. She went very still. I was the engineer, running the supply escort. He pointed at the crash site on her screen. That damage? That's not environmental failure. That's weapons fire. Your clan shot it down. Rava stared at the wreckage, at the small dark craters that could have been anything, could have been. Shot down their own children's medicine, Ethan said. And now they're selling it. The silence stretched. Then Rava moved, fast, violent, slamming her fist into the console hard enough to crack the screen. Sparks flew. She hit it again and again until Ethan grabbed her wrist. Stop! She rounded on him, eyes wild, burning, filled with something beyond rage. They're children, she whispered. I know. And I can't. I have no authority, no claim. You have me. She stopped, stared at him. I'm your contract, Ethan said. Your meat shield. So let's go get what's yours. You can barely stand. I'm standing now. You'll die. I was dying when I knocked on your door. He met her eyes. Those supplies were my mission. I don't leave missions unfinished. Something shifted in her expression. Recognition. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Not a burden, not a mistake. A person. The radar pinged. They both turned. The blip that had been at the crash site was moving again. One signature peeling off, accelerating, heading directly toward the hut. How fast can you move? Rava asked. Fast enough. She threw him a sand cloak and goggles. Too big, meant for someone her size, and started pulling weapons off the rack. Rifle, sidearm, something that looked like a compact grenade launcher. Ethan pulled on the gear, cinching the cloak tight, his ribs screaming protest, but he ignored them. Stay low, stay quiet, Rava said. And if I tell you to run, I run. Got it. She grabbed one more thing from the wall, the carved stone, the clan mark. She stared at it for a long moment before tucking it into her armor. Let's go. They hit the door together. The desert wind slammed into them, gritty and hostile. Rava led, moving with easy grace. Ethan followed, stumbling occasionally but keeping pace. Behind them, the sound of an engine grew louder. They reached the skiff bay, barely more than a reinforced shelter with a tarp roof. And Rava threw back the covering to reveal something that looked like a cross between a boat and a fighter jet. Sleek, low to the ground, equipped with oversized turbines meant for sand instead of water. She jumped into the pilot's seat. Ethan climbed in beside her, barely getting his harness clicked before she slammed the throttle forward. The skiff roared to life. They shot out of the bay like a bullet, sand exploding in their wake, the world becoming a blur of white and gold and brutal speed. Ethan looked back. The pursuing skiff had just crested the ridge behind Rava's hut, larger than theirs, armed with mounted weapons, and gaining. Friend of yours? Ethan yelled over the engine noise. Rava didn't answer, but her silence meant everything. She pushed the throttle harder. The skiff's warning chime beeped once, twice, continuous. Ethan checked the display panel and felt his stomach drop. Targeting lock acquired. They're aiming at us. I noticed. Rava yanked the controls hard left, the skiff tilting at an angle that should have been impossible, and a bolt of superheated plasma screamed past where they'd been a second before. The sand where it hit turned to glass. She straightened out, pushed the throttle to maximum, and the skiff's engine howled in protest. How far to the crash site? Ethan shouted. 12 kilometers. Can we make it? Ask me when we're not being shot at. Another bolt, this one closer. The skiff's shields flared, energy crackling across the hull, and alarms started screaming. Shields at 60%. Ethan read off the display. Rava's hands flew across the controls, redirecting power, compensating, keeping them moving. There's a panel under your seat, red handle. Ethan fumbled beneath him, found it, yanked. A compartment popped open, revealing what looked like an emergency flare launcher. "Load it and aim behind us." "This is a flare gun. It's a chaff launcher. Just do it." He grabbed the device, slammed in the cartridge from the compartment, and leaned out the side of the skiff. Wind tore at him, sand pelting his goggles, the pursuing vehicle now close enough he could see the gunner adjusting their aim. "Now!" Rava screamed. Ethan fired. The chaff round exploded behind them in a cloud of metallic particles, scattering radar signatures, breaking the targeting lock. The next plasma bolt went wide. "Yes!" Ethan shouted. "Don't celebrate yet!" The pursuing skiff wasn't slowing down. If anything, it was getting closer, the pilot abandoning precision for raw aggression. Ahead, a dune field rose up like a wall, massive ridges, sharp drops, a maze of sand and rock. Rava aimed straight for it. "What are you—" "Hold on!" They hit the first dune at full speed. The skiff went airborne. For a second, Ethan felt weightless, suspended, the world dropping away beneath them. He saw the crash site in the distance, wreckage gleaming in the sun, figures moving around it. Then they came down. The landing was brutal, controlled chaos, the skiff's suspension screaming as it absorbed the impact. Rava didn't slow. She carved through the dune field like she'd memorized every curve, threading between obstacles with desperate familiarity. Behind them, the pursuing skiff tried to follow. It clipped a ridge wrong, went into a spin, and slammed sideways into a dune wall hard enough that Ethan felt the impact through the sand. Rava slowed, checking her rear display. The other skiff was down but not destroyed. Smoke rising from the engine. Figures climbing out, shaking off the crash but stranded. "That won't stop them for long," she said. "Then we don't waste time." The crash site was a kilometer ahead now, close enough to see details. The transport's hull split open like a cracked egg, cargo containers scattered across the sand, raiders moving with casual efficiency as they loaded crates onto their vehicles. Rava brought the skiff to a stop behind a low ridge, cutting the engine. Silence rushed back in, oppressive and thick. They could hear voices now carried on the wind. Laughter, the sound of metal scraping metal. Ethan and Rava crawled to the ridge's crest and looked down. 7 raiders, all armed, armored, moving with the confidence of people who'd never been challenged. And the crates they were loading, Ethan recognized the markings. Medical supplies, respiratory equipment, everything the brood house needed. "How do we do this?" he whispered. Rava was quiet for a long moment, studying the layout, calculating angles and cover points. "We don't," she finally said. "I do. You stay here." "Not a chance. You're not a fighter. Neither are they expecting opposition." She looked at him, war happening behind her eyes. "You're really annoying. I've been told." Below one of the raiders, Keth, Ethan realized, recognizing the mechanical eye, kicked open a crate. Medical inhalers spilled out, small and fragile and desperately needed. Keth picked one up, examined it, then crushed it in his fist. "Cheap," he said to his companions, "but traders don't care about quality. They pay by weight." Something in Rava snapped. Ethan saw it happen, the careful control shattering, replaced by cold, focused rage. She stood. "Rava, wait!" But she was already moving, sliding down the ridge with her rifle raised. Ethan swore and followed. Keth saw them when they were halfway down. His mechanical eye whirred, focusing, and his expression shifted from surprise to something darker. Amusement. "Rava," he called out, not even bothering to raise his weapon. "Changed your mind about those contract seals?" "Those supplies belong to the brood house," Rava said, her voice carrying across the sand. "Our law, our children." "Your children?" Keth laughed. "You left, remember? You don't get to claim them anymore." The other raiders laughed, spreading out in a loose semicircle, hands drifting toward weapons, but not drawing yet. Still amused, still not taking the threat seriously. Ethan stepped forward, and he saw Keth's expression shift slightly. Confusion. The human was supposed to be hired muscle, not this half-dead engineer who looked like he'd crawled out of the desert on pure spite. "You're condemning children," Ethan said quietly. Keth's amusement faded. "Better them than us. That's the rule out here, human. The strong survive." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Ethan pulled out the contract chip he'd grabbed from Rava's hut, held it up. "Shoot me and her contract collapses. Legal claim voided." You won't be salvaging, you'll be stealing. Whispers rippled through the raiders. Uncertainty. Their law mattered. Pride mattered more. Keth's expression darkened. Clever, but there's another rule out here. He drew his weapon, a massive hand cannon that looked like it could punch through armor. Blood decides authority, and you, he aimed at Ethan, have no claim here. Then blood it is, Rava said. She stepped between them, shield-like, and Keith's aim shifted slightly, uncertain. You'd fight clan for a human? Keth asked. I'd fight for what's right. There's no such thing as right. There's only strong and weak. Then prove it. The challenge hung in the air, sharp and deadly. Keth smiled. Gladly. He fired. The world exploded into chaos. Rava moved, faster than Ethan would have thought possible for someone her size, tackling him sideways as the plasma bolt screamed past. They hit the sand rolling, came up separated, and suddenly the raiders were everywhere. Ethan scrambled toward cover, a piece of the transport's hull, half buried in sand, as weapons fire lit up the crash site. Rava was moving like a storm, firing with devastating precision, each shot disabling rather than killing. Non-lethal, controlled, professional. But there were 7 of them. Ethan saw a raider flanking, aiming at Rava's exposed back. No thought, just action. He grabbed a piece of debris and threw it. It hit the raider's helmet, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to break his aim. The shot went wide. The raider turned toward Ethan instead. Oh, hell, he ran. The landscape was a nightmare. Wreckage and sand and scattered cargo creating a deadly maze. Ethan sprinted through it, weapons fire tracking him, plasma bolts turning sand to glass behind his heels. He dove behind a cargo container, gasping, and saw what was inside. The medical supplies. Inhalers, respiratory masks, IV fluids, everything the children needed. The crate's harness was still attached, hooks and straps meant for loading. If he could just, the raider appeared around the container's edge. Ethan grabbed the nearest object, an inhaler, and threw it. It bounced off the raider's chest plate, ineffective, almost pathetic. The raider laughed. That's the best you... Rava's shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard but not unconscious, already reaching for his sidearm. Ethan didn't wait. He threw himself at the crate's harness, unhooking clamps with hands that shook from adrenaline and fear. The container was heavy, designed to be moved by machinery, but he didn't need to lift it. Just release it. The last clamp came free. The container shifted, sliding down the slight slope of the dune, picking up momentum. The raider saw it coming, tried to roll clear, but too slow. The container caught him, pinned him harmlessly but thoroughly. Ethan allowed himself 1 second of relief. Then a shot grazed his shoulder. Pain, white hot and immediate, shot through his arm. He stumbled, his hand going numb, and the ground disappeared beneath him as he slid down the dune's face. He grabbed at sand, at nothing, at... His fingers caught something. The container's harness strap still attached, dangling over the edge. He held on. Below him, a drop into a dune trough. Not far, maybe 3 meters, but landing wrong in his condition could mean broken bones, unconsciousness, death. Above, the sound of fighting continued. Rava's voice, shouting something in her language. More weapons fire. The strap started to tear. Ethan looked up, saw the stitching separating, strand by strand. His canteen, the empty one he'd used to jam Rava's door, was still clipped to the harness above him. One strap, one thin piece of material between him and falling. The fighting sounds changed, closer, desperate. He couldn't see what was happening, could only hear Rava's controlled breathing shift to something harder, more labored. Outnumbered, surrounded. The strap tore another inch, and then silence. Not peace, the silence of held breath, of someone deciding between mercy and murder. Ethan heard Keth's voice, cold and final. Your human is dead or gone. Your supplies are ours, and you... A pause. You're alone. No, Rava said quietly. I'm not. Movement above. Someone looking over the edge. Rava. She saw him dangling, saw the torn strap, saw everything in a single glance. Their eyes met, and Ethan saw something break open in her expression. Every wall she'd built, every defense she'd maintained, crumbling in the face of this moment. She threw her rifle away. The sound of it hitting sand was like thunder. A gasp rippled through the raiders behind her. Disbelief. Surrender wasn't done. Not like this. Not ever. Rava dove. Her hand caught Ethan's wrist just as the strap gave way completely. The weight of him pulled her forward, sliding, but she dug her boots into the sand, braced, and hauled him up with strength born from desperation rather than muscle. They came up together, tumbling back from the edge, and for a second they just lay there in the sand, breathing hard, alive. "Don't let go," Rava gasped. "I wasn't planning to," Ethan managed. Behind them, footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Keth walked to the edge, looked down at them, his weapon raised. Not at Rava, at Ethan. "Last chance," Keth said. "Walk away, leave the human, take your contract and go." Rava stood slowly, putting herself between them again, unarmed, defiant. "No." Keth's finger tightened on the trigger. "Stop." The voice came from behind Keth. Old, commanding, absolutely certain of its authority. An elder. Ethan recognized the robes. Ceremonial, traditional, woven with clan marks. The elder walked with a staff that left deep prints in the sand, and the raiders parted before him like water. He looked at the scene, the discarded rifle, Rava standing over Ethan, the medical supplies scattered across the sand. "Her contract stands," the elder said. "The human fought for our young. The crates go to the canyon." Keth's weapon didn't lower. "He's a stranger. He has no claim. He claimed blood debt. He risked death for our children. That is clan law, old and binding." The elder's gaze shifted to Ethan. "Stand, human." Ethan stood, legs shaking but holding. The elder studied him with eyes that had seen decades of desert and death and difficult choices. "You are not what was ordered," the elder said. "No," Ethan agreed. "You are weak, injured, barely surviving." "Yes, and yet you fought. It was the right thing to do." Something shifted in the elder's expression. Recognition. "Keth, stand down." Keith's weapon finally lowered, but his expression promised this wasn't over. He spat in the sand and backed away, the other raiders following. The elder turned to Rava. "You left clan. You have no right to speak for the Broodhouse. I know. And yet you returned. For them. Only for them." The elder nodded slowly. "Then carry the supplies to the canyon. Both of you. Let the children see who bled for them." He turned and walked away, the other raiders following, leaving Ethan and Rava alone among the wreckage and the scattered medical supplies. Rava was shaking. Rage, relief, adrenaline, everything she'd been holding back. She sat down hard in the sand, head in her hands. Ethan sat beside her, his own hands trembling, the gunshot graze on his shoulder burning. "You threw away your weapon," he said quietly. "I know. That could have gotten us both killed." "I know. Why?" She lifted her head, looked at him with eyes that were wet but refusing to spill over. "Because you wouldn't let go. Because I've spent my whole life watching people abandon what matters for what's easy. And you," a broken laugh, "you just kept holding on." Behind them, one of the raiders, younger than the others, uncertain, approached slowly. Not threatening, almost hesitant. He knelt, not to Rava, to Ethan. "Blood debt," the raider said quietly in halting common. "You honored, clan, remembers." Then he stood and walked away, leaving them in stunned silence. "Did he just," Ethan started, "swear loyalty?" "Yes." Rava shook her head, somewhere between disbelief and laughter. "You just earned clan respect. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I didn't do it for respect." "I know. That's why it matters." They sat for another moment, letting the adrenaline drain, letting the reality settle. Then Rava stood, offered her hand. Ethan took it. "Come on," she said. "We have medicine to deliver." Together they started loading crates onto the skiff. The work was hard, exhausting, every movement pulling at injuries neither of them wanted to acknowledge. But they worked in sync, finding a rhythm, until the skiff was loaded with everything the Broodhouse needed. The sun was setting when they finally climbed into the pilot seats, painting the desert in shades of amber and blood. Rava started the engine. The canyon was 2 hours away. They drove in silence for the first hour, the landscape shifting from open dunes to rocky outcroppings, the air cooling as evening settled. Finally, Ethan spoke. The children. How many are left? Rava's hands tightened on the controls. 37. Last I heard, but that was a week ago. The numbers hung between them, heavy and horrible. We'll make it in time, Ethan said. You don't know that. Neither do you, she almost smiled. The canyon appeared ahead as full night fell. A massive gash in the desert floor, walls rising like rusted teeth, lit from below by bioluminescent fungi that grew in the dampness near underground water sources. Rava guided the skiff down a narrow path carved into the canyon wall, following markers only she could recognize. The path widened into a ledge, then a platform, and then the brood house. It wasn't what Ethan had expected. Not some primitive settlement, but a carefully constructed community built into the canyon walls. Living spaces carved into rock, connected by bridges and walkways. Gardens growing in terrace levels. Solar collectors on every roof. Water condensers humming quietly. A home, but quiet. Too quiet. No children playing in the common areas. No voices echoing off the canyon walls. Rava brought the skiff to a stop near the medical center, a larger structure marked with healing symbols. She sat for a moment, hands still on the controls, gathering courage. Then a door opened. A small figure emerged, a girl, maybe 7 in human terms, blue-skinned and thin, wearing a breathing mask connected to a portable oxygen tank. She saw the skiff, saw Rava, and ran. Rava! Rava's back! The cry echoed through the canyon, and suddenly children were appearing everywhere. From doorways, from bridges, from the medical center. All of them too thin, all of them struggling to breathe, but moving, alive, desperate for hope. Rava climbed out of the skiff and they swarmed her. Careful, gentle, but needing to touch her, to confirm she was real. Did you bring it? One of them asked. Did you bring our air? Rava couldn't speak. She just pointed at the loaded cargo bay. Ethan started unloading crates, and the medical staff came running. Adults who'd clearly been operating on the edge of desperation, eyes hollowed by stress and grief and impossible choices. They opened the first crate, and Ethan heard one of them gasp. It's real, it's all here. The girl who'd first seen them tugged on Ethan's sleeve. Her breathing mask muffled her voice, but he could still hear the hope. Did you bring our air? He smiled, feeling something crack open in his chest. Brought the wrong delivery, he said gently. Stayed for the right one. She threw her arms around his waist, holding tight. Rava was watching from where she knelt, surrounded by children, her face a war between joy and pain. She looked away quickly, jaw trembling, fighting for control. The elder from the crash site appeared at the medical center entrance. He must have taken a faster route. Behind him, more elders, the governing council. Their expressions were complicated. Not quite approval, not quite anger. Something harder to define. Rava, the elder said, come, you as well, human. This concerns you both. They were led into the council cave, a natural chamber deep in the canyon, its walls covered in centuries of clan markings. The temperature dropped sharply, the air suddenly cool and damp. The council sat in a semicircle. 7 elders, each one bearing scars and clan marks that spoke of long survival. The one who'd spoken at the crash site, clearly the senior member, placed something on the stone table between them. Ethan's canteen. This man protected our young, the elder said. His contract is open. If he wishes clan status, he may request it. Silence. Ethan looked at Rava, who looked equally stunned. Clan, Ethan managed. I barely survived your planet. You survived us first, Rava said quietly. That's harder. A rare, fragile smile passed between them. The elder lifted the canteen, filled now, water beating on the metal. Blood or water shared freely creates bonds that cannot be broken, he said. You gave your blood to protect our children. If you drink, you accept clan bond. Our debts become yours. Our children become your responsibility. Choose carefully. Ethan looked at the canteen, at the water, life itself in this harsh world, at Rava watching him with fear and hope and something deeper, at the children beyond the cave entrance playing now, breathing easier, alive because he hadn't given up. He took the canteen, drank. The water was cool and perfect and tasted like a promise. "I accept," he said. The council exhaled as one. "Then you are clan," the elder said, "and your bond with Rava is recognized. What she protects, you protect. What she owes, you share." He stood. "Your independent status is revoked, Rava. You are clan again. Both of you. The brood house is your charge." He walked to the cave entrance, the other elders following, leaving Rava and Ethan alone in the sudden silence. Rava sat down hard on the stone bench, looking shell-shocked. "They never forgive," she whispered. "Never. Once you leave, maybe the law needed to change." She looked at him, and he saw the walls finally, completely come down. No defenses, no armor. Just a person who'd been carrying impossible weight for too long, finally allowed to set it down. "You should have walked away," she said. "You don't owe us." "I don't do it because I owe. I do it because it's right." A laugh broke from her, half sob, half relief. They sat in the cool darkness, listening to the sounds of the brood house settling into evening. Children's laughter, finally free of the rasp of struggling lungs. Adults talking, the edge of panic gone from their voices. Life continuing. Finally, Rava spoke. "When you knocked on my hut, you were ready to die." "I was. When I opened it, I was ready to send you back. You didn't." "No." Her hand found his, carefully, like she was testing whether it was allowed. "I got the wrong order. The universe sent me an engineer instead of a warrior, a dying man instead of a meat shield. Sorry to disappoint. You didn't." Her fingers tightened on his. "You saved them. All of them. Not because you were ordered to. Not because you were paid. Just because it was the right thing to do. That's not how the world works. Maybe it should be." They walked back to the main compound together, and the children mobbed them immediately. Healthier already, the medicine working fast. They're breathing easier. The celebration was chaotic and joyful. Food shared freely, meager portions stretched to feed everyone, but shared with joy rather than desperation. Children showing off their breathing masks like prizes. Adults thanking them over and over. And through it all, Rava stayed close, not hovering, just present, like she'd finally found a place she was allowed to be. Late into the night, when the children had been coaxed to bed and the adults had drifted to their quarters, Ethan and Rava found themselves alone on one of the canyon bridges, looking out at the bioluminescent fungi painting the walls in shades of blue and green. "I never thanked you," Ethan said quietly. "For what?" "The water, your reserve supply. You could have let me die." "I should have." She leaned against the railing, close enough that her armor brushed his shoulder. "By our law, resources go to the strong. The useful. You were none of those things." "Then why didn't you?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because you knocked. You could have given up, but you knocked. And something about that refusal to quit." She stopped, searching for words. "I couldn't ignore it." Ethan reached down, unclipped his canteen from his belt, the same one he jammed in her door, now refilled and marked with clan symbols, and offered it to her. She stared at it like he'd offered her something precious and dangerous. "It's yours," he said. "Was from the moment you opened your door." Rava took the canteen slowly, reverently, and then did something he didn't expect. She unclipped it from the chain and hung it on her armor, right over her heart, publicly, deliberately, a symbol, a claim, a choice. "When you carry someone's water," she said quietly, "you're saying their survival matters as much as your own, that you'll share resources, share burdens, share everything. It's permanent, recognized by clan law as partnership, as family." "I know," Ethan said, "and I'm still giving it to you." Her breath hitched. For a second he thought she might cry, but she held it together, barely. Instead she pulled him into a hug, sudden, fierce, desperate. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other under the alien stars. Two people who'd found something neither had been looking for. When they finally pulled apart, Rava was smiling, real and unguarded. "Come on," she said. "We have a brood to take care of, children to heal, a whole community to rebuild." "Sounds exhausting." "It is." She took his hand. "But you're clan now." They walked back toward the living quarters together, her armor with his canteen hanging over her heart, both of them finally home. The desert night settled cool and quiet around the canyon. Somewhere in the medical center, a child laughed, clear and healthy, breathing easy. And in the morning, there would be work to do. A community to rebuild from the ground up, better this time, kinder. But for now, Ethan Cole, engineer, survivor, the wrong order that became the right choice, stood in an alien canyon and knew exactly where he belonged. Not because someone had ordered him to be there, but because when a giantess had opened her door to a dying man, neither of them had walked away. She ordered a meaty shield and kept the dying man who chose her children instead.